Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode If You Could Hide to Color podcast. My name's Daniel. This is my brother Clive.
Hello, everybody. Yes, welcome. We're right at the end, Daniel. We talked about last week how I'm on the end of the tab of Doctrine and Covenants. If you're using your phone, we're on the very last line of Doctrine and Covenants on the phone. So we're getting right at the end here.
Yeah. It seems like we just started. I mean, there's just so much, and it's been a great year. Clive, I'm going to start off. I don't have so much have a quote. Well, I guess I do at the end of this, but I thought I'd give a little activity about Joseph Smith's translation of the Book of Mormon. I've got a whole. I'm hoping here. I've got a whole list of books, and I've got the total time. I've got the time it took per day to write these books in comparison to the pace in which Joseph Smith wrote the Book of Mormon. If you think of any long books, if any long books come to mind, I'm hoping I can tell you how long it took to write these books. Do you have any books? What is a long book that you're aware of?
That I'm aware of? Okay, there's long books. I think of Lord of the Rings, huge book, huge movie franchise, so it must be massive in books.
Yep. So Lord of the Rings was written at 125 words per day. That's how quick the book was written. 125 words every single day.
Think of another one. Think more modern, Harry Potter. Surely that was a bit quicker.
Harry Potter. I've got that on my list. 175 per day for the whole franchise. So more than 1 million words went into that series.
Wow. Okay.
Anything else?
Let's have a look. In between, there's a book called It by Stephen King. I know that's a really, really thick book.
It by Stephen King was written 300 words per day. So in the comparison, I wanted to just make the point here that Joseph Smith translated the Book of Mormon 4,150 words a day. Is the pace that he got through the book. And talking about it later, when Emma Smith, she wrote this. My belief is that the Book of Mormon is of divine authenticity. I am satisfied that no man could have dictated the writing of the manuscripts unless he was inspired for, when acting as his scribe, your father. So this is Emma Smith talking to her son, Joseph Smith III, would dictate to me for hour after hour. And when returning after meals or after interruption, he would at once begin where he left off without eating the manuscript or having any portion of it read to him. This was a usual thing for him to do. It would have been improbable that a learned man could do this, and for one so ignorant and unlearned as he was, it was simply impossible. So Emma Smith, of course, would go on and have a lot to do with the reorganized church. Of course, Joseph Smith III was its first elected prophet, but they used the Book of Mormon. They certainly don't really anymore, but she had a lifelong conviction of the Book of Mormon and about her first husband's divine authority in relation to the Book of Mormon.
Great. I mean, I listen to that and I think that could be taken as an insult these days, but she's really trying to emphasize how divine he is, not how uneducated he is, but how divine it is that the Lord is speaking to him because of the education that he was able to get as a child. So great. That's really interesting about the amount of time that he was able to translate compared to all those other modern day books that we've got. All right, well, let's get into that section there. So this week we're talking about section 133, 134. If you've had time to read it, section 133 is pretty long, but section 134 is pretty short. And we're really rehashing things that we've already talked about. And something I want to ask you, Daniel, why are we going back in time so much right now? We're going back to 1831. What's going on there?
That's right. So originally, this section is essentially it's an appendix to the Doctrine and Covenants. So section 1 is an introduction. Section 1 of the Doctrine and Covenants is an introduction to our beliefs and the structure of the church. Section 133 is received 2 days after section 1. And section 1 was just put at the back. And it really is, it's to let its readers know what is going to happen when the Lord comes again. What can they expect? What can they see? What can they expect to see, hear, feel? All of these different things. What divine doctrines are going to come about? We'll hear some really intense things about the lost tribes. So Joseph is talking, and he says that he wants to continue to educate the elders. In fact, they would say to him, continue to teach us. The church is very young at this stage. It's only been established for just over a year. And so the elders are saying to the prophet, can you continue to teach us? So he teaches them these things, and they get put in the very, very back of the scriptures. Now, when we move to section 134, that's different. These are non-divinely established things. These are a set of doctrinal beliefs that the church has, and they are put at the very end. They come through in 1835, and Oliver Cowdery is actually responsible for putting most of this together.
Like I said at the top of the show, I feel like we've really got into a lot of this already. So it's sort of reminding us this is to come. Like, it pretty much starts off that the second coming is coming. So be prepared. Essentially, the second coming is near. Let's say the Lord shall suddenly come to his temple. He's speaking to all the church members, said it's to prepare, and there's like this warning right at the beginning to all nations: prepare ye. The Lord comes, prepare to repent. It's very much, don't forget that this is happening. And it's interesting, because what's that, 200 years ago? But it's not that the Lord delayed his time for whatever reason. It's we all need to be prepared for this coming. It'll come in the blink of an eye. Like, how old are we? We're pretty old now, And to me, I think my mission was like, I don't know, a couple of years ago. It really wasn't that long ago. But what was it?
Yeah.
What do we think? Like 15 years ago or something? When I finished it. So, time just slips by so slowly, and the Lord's saying, hey, it's going to come before you know it. Just suddenly, like a thief in the night, the Lord will appear. So prepare ye all the ends of the earth. And so it's really, it's really emphasizing that straight at the beginning.
I mean, exactly right. Well, let's get into some verses. So you were just referring to verse 2. The Lord who shall suddenly come to his temple, the Lord who shall come down upon the world with a curse to judgment, upon all the nations that forget God, and upon all the ungodly among you. So he's coming down to everyone. He's coming down to his temple. And whether the earth is his temple or this is a physical temple, go to verse 4, Clive. Wherefore, prepare ye, O my people, sanctify yourselves, gather ye together, O ye people of my church upon the land of Zion, all you that have been commanded to tarry. So the Lord's saying, gather together. And this is in reference to a conference. So gather together and be together, be as one. Zion now is wherever the Lord's church is. So gather there together, be as one. And then it says in 6, call your solemn assemblies and speak often one to another, and let every man call upon the name of the Lord. Gather together in conferences, teach each other. These are the things that will help you as the time comes, and it prepares you for the time of the Lord.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think it's easy to forget the importance of church. We talk about the sacrament, and obviously that's very, very important. But we talked about last year the things that we are especially, and I wouldn't say expert in, or the thing that we know the most. And I think the important thing about church and gathering together and hearing those people is there's people that know a lot more about certain things than others. And there's something that you need to give to your ward to help other people. And so we need to not only gather together for the importance of the sacrament, but we need to gather together for the importance of understanding doctrine so that we can prepare for the coming of the Lord. And I feel like that's, what it's talking about. Is it not, yes, sacrament is important, but there's so much more to it. There's the gathering of the saints to learn about the importance of Zion and everything the Lord has to say.
Well, that's what it talks about next, Clive. So it talks about Babylon. Send forth the elders of my church unto the nations which are afar off, unto the islands of the sea. Send forth unto foreign lands. Call upon all nations, first upon the Gentiles, and then upon the Jews. And it continues to talk here, and certainly the section is complex. But then it says to us in 10, yea, let the cry go forth among all people. Awake and arise, go forth to meet the bridegroom. Behold, and lo, the bridegroom cometh. Go ye out to meet him. Prepare yourselves for the great day of the Lord. Of course, referring to the wise and foolish virgins and their oil lamp. Prepare, go out and meet him. Be ready, have your oil lamps full. And so it's saying, go out, teach the people that they need to be ready. In 12, let them therefore who are among the Gentiles flee unto Zion. Those people who are amongst and they feel like they can't get out of that Gentile world, that wicked world, flee out. Now find yourself Zion. Just in our local ward today, Clive, we had some people visiting, and I asked them, oh, where are you visiting from? And they're not visiting from anywhere. They were the missionaries tracked at their home, and they said they're on a journey faith and they're not really sure what to do. But I thought about them when I was reading this again to myself, that you can therefore who are among the Gentiles flee unto Zion. That doesn't mean flee physically and go from one country to another. That means where you are, find your sanctuary, find your safe place, find Zion. So I think there is so much in here. I mean, I could just keep going on and on about the same sort of thing.
Yeah, I really thought like this section here that we're just about to get into or just started. I read this as a very missionary based thing, like not just missionaries out in the field, elders and sisters. I mean, like everybody. Like our job is to gather the tribes of Israel and to meet at Zion in the last day. But to gather the tribes of Israel, we must find and we must go out and collect them all. Basically, that's the job. It says in verse 13, and let them who be of Judah flee unto Jerusalem, unto the mountain of the Lord's house. So this is basically us that aren't part of the lost tribes. The Judah and the house of Israel. They're the ones that went off, the 10 tribes. But this is the Lord's chosen people that we're supposed to gather together, and those that we will eventually find are again part of the Lord's chosen people. And it's just very, I don't know, I just see there's more missionary based here. 16, hearken and hear, O ye inhabitants of the earth. So everybody, listen ye elders of my church, together, and hear the voice of the Lord, for that he calleth upon all men, and he commandeth all men everywhere to repent. So this isn't, we've stopped talking about people of my church. That's what the Lord's talking about first. And now he's talking about everybody. We must all gather together. We must all be. And this is really where the importance of missionary work, like the Lord's coming, we must gather everyone together. This is what it's sort of starting out with.
Yeah. And in 15, Clive, it gives us a glimpse of what of the world we're trying to leave. Let not your flight be in haste, but let all things be prepared before you. So don't just at a whim, just, burn things off and move on to the next. It's like we're humans. We need to take stock. We need to take a moment. We need to understand what we're doing. And it says here, and he that goeth, let him not look back, lest sudden destruction shall come upon him. Once you've prepared, you've taken your time, you've heard the good word, you've taken your time, you've made that leap forward to go and find your Zion, then don't look back. Don't look back, and you will trap yourself in this idea that, well, back there was easy. Back there, I didn't have to worry about these current things I'm stressing on. Don't look back and continue to look forward, knowing that you're surrounded in this Zionic mindset.
And then it just talks about what's going to happen when the Lord comes, which again, we've talked about this before, but basically the Lord will come down from heaven, stand on a mount, all the lands will come together as one. Jerusalem will be rebuilt. The land of promise will be built, or the land of promise will be prepared for the Lord before he comes. Mountains will flow down, and the Lord will speak out of heaven to all those nations. And, the Lord will rule the world, essentially, at this point. It's interesting because then later on he goes a bit back, which we'll get into in a minute. But, it said, this is what's going to happen when I come back again. And he sort of just lists off the things that are going to happen.
Yeah, exactly right. In 24, and the land of Jerusalem and the land of Zion shall be turned back into their own place, and the earth shall be like as it was in the days before it was divided. It's exactly what you were just talking about there. The Savior will stand in the midst. And then it goes in to educate us. So in 26, and they who are in the north country shall come in remembrance before the Lord, and their prophets shall hear his voice, and shall no longer stay themselves, and they shall smite the rock, and the ice shall flow down from their presence. So I'll just read the next two before we break that. And an highway shall be cast up in the midst of the great deep. Their enemies shall become a prey unto them. So what's it saying here is these people, these lost tribes, they're going to come forward. We're going to see them. We're going to learn who they are. It tells us in a couple of verses down that they're going to be bringing treasures, possibly great scriptures that we'll be able to learn from. But I thought that was really interesting because it says to them, and their prophets shall hear his voice, and they shall no longer stay themselves. They shall smite the rock, and the ice shall flow down at their presence. So wherever they're going to come from, they will, will know about it because it's such a big event.
I find the lost tribes, Daniel, really, really interesting, and there's so much more I need to study and understand about it. And you can really get lost in it. Like I got sidetracked, not in a belief system, but in an idea system of someone was talking about how the lost 10 tribes of Israel are in the hollow earth and they're there and they'll come down when Christ comes. And I'm like, oh, that's wrong, but it's super interesting how you got to that point. But I just want to give a breakdown of how the tribes were lost, right? So many, many years after Moses, the Moses and the promised land and all that, was Joshua, and then there was judges, and then there was kings, and then from this became this civil war from the kings, and 10 of the tribes went north and 2 of the tribes went south. So the northern tribes were Israel, the southern tribes were Judah, Judah, Jerusalem sort of area. Prophets come and warn them that this split is going to cause major destruction upon the people, but then Assyrians come in and conquer the northern lands. And with the Assyrians conquer the northern lands, they sort of integrate themselves partially into the 10 tribes, and other parts of the 10 tribes sort of escape. But, they don't escape like the North Pole or anything, they just escape the land. And so they've now scattered, where the 2 other tribes that we have down here, the down the south, they've integrated them into everything else. And so we are all part of, well, not we, but, there is a major part of the 2 tribes that we all know about, but there is the 10 lost tribes. But what's interesting about the 10 lost tribes is they're only lost because we don't know. I mean, I was going to say because we don't know where they are, but it's a bit more complex than like Gordon B. Hinckley said this back in 1997. The so-called lost tribes were scattered into the into the nations of the earth. We find their descendants throughout the world today as the gospel is carried to every land. So, yes, they're lost because they're only lost because they're scattered, but they are all around us, and we just don't know until. I mean, one of the most obvious times is when you get your patriarchal lesson, you're told which tribe you're part of. But I'd say majority of the people are of those 2 southern tribes, but it's really interesting, and yeah, there's a lot more to study about it, but that's basically the history of how the tribes became lost.
I did do a little bit of extra reading, Clive, and I checked my Apocrypha.
Yep.
And it talks about the tribes in here. It says, this is in Esdras chapter 13, but they took their counsel among themselves that they would lead the multitude of the heathen and go out into the further country where mankind never lived, that they might keep their statutes there, which they had not kept in their own land. And they entered by a narrow passage of the river Euphrates, For the Most High then performed signs for them and held back the springs of the river until they had passed over. Anyway, I'm not going to read it all, but there's tons in here about the tribes and what they did. And it actually talks about half of them went through this narrow passage in the river Euphrates. I think it's Euphrates or Euphrates?
Yeah, it's Euphrates. Yeah, Euphrates. Yep.
So half of them go through this narrow passage in the river Euphrates, and half of them don't. Half of them stay on. These tribes, they would go on to become people in Europe. But I won't go into it too much. But there's a lot of material, like you've mentioned, and Cleon Skousen talks a lot about this, that the church has always been ruled by descendants of these lost tribes.
Yeah, and I think what you were saying with that passageway, when I was reading this, I sort of had that idea, and I wonder if the Lord's saying this in a symbolic way when he said in 27, and an highway shall be cast up in the midst of the great deep. Like almost like that's how they went, and that's how they're coming back. You know, that's how I read it. Oh, maybe it's like symbolic of they went there, and now they're going to come back on that way back down. More of just a physical passageway, you know?
No, they will come back through a passageway that will put the parting of the Moses parting of the Red Sea to a minor miracle compared to the passageway that the 10 tribes will come back from.
Yeah, but that time everyone would be shocked because we know it's coming.
Possibly, yes. Yeah. Well, let's continue going. So the boundaries of the everlasting hill shall tremble at their presence, and there they shall fall down and be crowned with glory, even in Zion, by the heads of the servants of the Lord, even the children of Ephraim. They shall be filled with songs of everlasting joy. And that is the blessing, it tells us, that is given to those tribes. So very, very interesting. Well, let's continue moving on. It tells us again in 37 that this gospel shall be preached unto every nation, kindred, tongue, and people. And then it tells us that after everyone's had the opportunity to hear the Lord or to hear the mission, O Lord, this is 42, thou shalt come down to make thy name known to thine adversaries. All nations shall tremble at thy presence when thou dost terrible things they look not for. So when the Lord comes down, people will see signs, and people will agree that they're signs. Some people will disagree that they're signs, but the Lord will come down, and providing we're doing the things that it tells us at the heading or the head of the section, verse 1, gathering together, verse 4, gathering together, verse 6, learning, teaching each other at our solemn assemblies, missionary work, then we will be aware of these signs and we'll appreciate them that are coming.
You know, it was only a few years ago where, to me, it seemed nearly impossible that all the corners of the earth would hear the gospel, because that's something that has to happen before the Lord comes back. Everyone must hear the gospel. Well, with the advancement of technology, everyone will get to that point. You know, obviously there's certain countries in the world that won't allow missionaries and won't allow proselytizing, but thanks to social media and other things on the internet, like that, everyone will have that opportunity, whether they accept it or not. That's not the point. The fact that everyone gets to hear it. And, you know, I believe, and I think you said differently last time we talked about this, I think the world's going to get way worse. People are going to get a lot worse, and people are going to be more closed off to the gospel. But with these advancements in technology, it's no, we're not allowed missions in this country, but hey, I can go online and I can still learn about it and I can talk about it. And, you know, missionaries these days, I say these days, sound like an old guy, but missionaries are allowed to go on social medias and try and get the word out there. So it's more than just going around knocking on doors and trying to get referrals off people. It's now exploring the area they're in just from the comfort of their own apartments.
Clive, this is where the next kind of section talks about the physical attributes. And this is in 46, and it shall be said, who is this that cometh down from God in heaven with dyed garments, yea, from the regions which are not known, clothed in his glorious apparel, traveling in the greatness of his strength? I am he who spake in righteousness, mighty to save. And the Lord shall be read in his apparel, and his garments like him that treadeth in the wine vat. And so great shall be the glory of his presence that the sun shall hide his face in shame, and the moon shall be withhold its light, and the stars shall be hurled from their from their places. And his voice shall be heard, I have trodden the winepress alone, and have brought judgment upon all people, and none were with me. So these are physical things that are happening, but the Lord is it tells us here that do you agree here, Clive, that this is telling us he will come in darkness, there'll be no sun, or the emanating light from a being will light up the world?
Yeah, I think this is more symbolic. Like the sun isn't going to go, I am ashamed, I'm going to hide. But I think his glory will be so bright that the sun will be, it'll be like, oh, the sun isn't as bright as I expected it to be
The
compared to
sun
this.
doesn't need to be here.
Yeah, like you look how bright the moon is, and if you've never seen the sun, you would think, wow, the moon is so bright. But compared to the sun, it's nothing. And I think that's the same when the Lord comes again. Compared to the glory and light that the Lord brings with him, the sun will be nothing.
And then Clive, he talks about that he's completed his mission for others. Enoch, he talks about Noah, Moses, talks about the mission is being completed for everyone. The graves in 56, and the graves of the saints shall be opened, and they shall come forth and stand on the right hand of the Lamb when he shall stand upon Mount Zion, a holy city, the New Jerusalem, and they shall sing the song of the Lamb day and night forever and ever. So Christ is going to come, and there'll be miraculous things that are happening. Those people, there's people in their patriarchal blessing who are told they'll come forward in the morning. The graves of the saints shall be opened, and they shall come forth and stand on the right hand of the Lamb. What a blessing to receive. What a blessing to hear about.
Yeah, when I read this, I thought it made me look back about when Christ came the first time. And when he was resurrected, many of the tombs opened, and many people were resurrected, and they went and they preached the gospel. What an incredible time that would have been. And you think, Christ coming again for the second time in his absolute glory, you just think how much more on top of how much glory that could have been, how much more it's going to be. And it says there in 57, and for this cause that men might be made partakers of the glories which were to be revealed. So not only will such a glory of majesty be about, but the fact that we will continue to be taught and be made partakers of this word that the Lord has for us. It's an exciting time when you look at it that way. You know, there's a lot of doom and gloom surrounding it. You know, some of you might be so ashamed that you want mountains to fall on top of you, and it's so much going to get worse before the Lord comes. But then, you know, you look at the glorious side of it. When he comes, just imagine what the world's going to be like.
Yeah. So 134, we see here is August the 17th, 1835, written by, really mainly by Oliver Cowdery, a little bit of help from William W. Phelps, but certainly Oliver Cowdery is the main author here. And these are just a section of beliefs, not revelatory, but Oliver Cowdery is really the main guy. These are voted later on. These are voted to be part of the Doctrine and Covenants. And I think they move from being an appendix to being a real section later on. But it really just talks about the governments. In verse 1, we believe that governments were instituted of God for the benefit of man, and that he holds men accountable for their acts in relation to them, both in making laws and administrating them for the good and safety of society. So Christ is at the helm of this government structure. And certainly we've learned in our Doctrine and Covenants study this year that the Lord approves this constitution and refers to it directly in a revelation to Joseph. But governments and its structure is good, and obviously in times can be used for very terrible things, but its structure can be good, and that it should be built around Christ-like attributes.
Yeah, I think it's important there, like you said, to remember that the Lord instituted the idea of a government because, you know, in heaven, there's a government in the sense of order. Everything's order. So there's this, and there's this, there's all this structure. And so no, Christ hasn't said every single leader that is in power right now, I have blessed because, that's the way I want it. That's not the case at all. Every single country has all these different rules. Some of them, that you might be in that country and think, this is great. Others might look at that country and think, what a terrible country to be in. But that's not what the Lord's saying here. Or that's not what Oliver Cowdery has written down here. But basically, the Lord has ordained the governmental structure, and it talks a lot about laws, and we should obey the laws of the land because of this structure that's been given. But then, there's all these variables as you go on, as you read through, but it all varies compared to, is it of the Lord and is it okay?
Clive, one thing that's in here is a snippet about what the saints were feeling at the time. We believe, so this is verse 4, we believe that religion is instituted of God and that men are amenable to him and to him only for the exercise of it, unless their religious opinions prompt them to infringe upon the rights and liberties of others. But we do not believe that human law has a right to interfere in prescribing rules of worship, to bind the conscience of men, nor dictate forms for public or private devotion. That the civil magistrate should restrain crime, but never control conscience, should punish guilt, and never suppress the freedom of the soul. And I'm imagining what the saints are dealing with at the time. This is in 1835. Bad things have happened in Jackson County. And, the saints are putting out what they believe. Oliver Cowdery, of course, he is, we're going to talk about, I think we'll talk about the article of faith in a couple of weeks. But the Oliver Cowdery is the first person to put together these articles, and he's thinking about this as time goes on. Well, what do we believe, and what do we believe the role of the government should be, and how can religious freedom be a part of a governmental structure? How far can it go? Do we have the right to excommunicate people within a religious structure? We want that freedom, but we also need a government to protect our freedoms and protect our rights to worship as we do.
Well, reading verse 5 and 6, even 4, like, I think the problem is, and the reason that this was more of an opinion than the Lord saying this is revelation, this is very much Oliver Cowdery's opinion. What seems like freedom in one country doesn't feel like freedom in another. Like, I obviously served my mission in California, and to me, the freedoms there are different to what we believe freedom is. I'm not going to say one of them is wrong and one of them is right, but there's, like, at what point do you say, well, we're free? You might have a dictator as a president, or whatever the North Korea's guy's called, president, king, I don't know. But, like, you might have somebody who says, all right, you must follow these exact things, but you're free to do whatever it is you want. You think, oh, great, we have this freedom. Even though we feel a bit strict, there might be this freedoms. Oh, well, the countries do this. Well, that doesn't feel free to me. And so, I don't know. As I was reading, I was thinking this is very much related to the situation that the saints are in now. Yes, we must follow laws. Yes, it's good to protect religious freedoms. And there's certain laws that come with certain punishments. And we need to just make sure we're following the law unless it goes contrary to God's law. But then again, where does freedom come in place? And I guess, like with anything, there's always choices. There's always, I guess, agency in a way where you can follow the law and you can continue what you're doing, or you cannot follow the law and then you'll be punished for it. And there's, at what point do you go, okay, well, I have to follow what the Lord says compared to what the land says? It's this balance. And I think with Latter-day Saints, we understand that there's this balance. We understand that the law might say one thing, but the Lord might say another. And we need to really keep this balance, keep this structure, to be able to continue to fill the laws, knowing that the Lord is going to come back.
I mean, surely nowadays there's no adversity with the local laws in most countries.
Yeah, I think there is definitely, but yeah, not in most countries, I would say. But there's definitely issues in other countries that we don't believe is correct. But again, it's that you've got to know that what you're doing is right in compared to what's happening in the country, and if that's right or not.
Yeah. Well, that's all we've really got time for. Thanks for tuning into another episode. If You Could Hide to Collar podcast, we appreciate you coming along on this journey. Catch us on YouTube, subscribe to us there. See us on Facebook and Instagram. Next week, we're talking about the martyrdom of Joseph and Hiram, and we're really close to finishing up our history, our look into the history of the church.